in progress. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Gestalt Get-Together. This is your podcast for everything GLP, echolalia, musical language, special interests, all these things that we as speech therapists working with GLPs and parents of GLPs really like to talk about. That's why you're here, right? On a podcast about GLP. I'm Corinne Zmoos. I'm a speech therapist and I work with GLPs. I center musicality, play stretches, and caregiver coaching about relational techniques. Now, this course, if you are listening live, welcome. I'm so glad you're here. Or if you're streaming later on, it is offered for point 0.1 CEUs through SpeechTherapyPD. Those of you who are here right now, you're going to get that credit after this episode is finished. But if you're listening later on and you're thinking, wow, I would really like to get a professional development hour for this, you should go to SpeechTherapyPD, check out the options that they have, and you could use my code Gestalt33 to get your first episode for free. All right, so it is early 2026. In 2025, my focus for the podcast was hearing from parents, therapists whose lives and work were transformed by reorienting their child interactions through incorporating ideas from GLP and NLA by Marge Blanc, 2012, 2022 or 2023. I forget when it was reissued, her book. We covered basics of echolalia, hyperlexia, special interests in 2025. But this year, what I really want to be doing is going deeper into the historical literature, current literature, interviewing some more academics and researchers, talking about challenges with things like data and goals, and also explore some critiques about what might be missing, what doesn't really hold up when we're talking about GLP. If you haven't listened to the episodes about cognitive biases and logical fallacies, I really recommend you go back and listen to those so that we can lean into some of the critiques and figure out where we want to get stronger in how we talk about GLP. Okay, let's get to our guest. Thank you so much for your patience with the intro. Today, I'm going to be talking to Biz. Yes, Biz is their name. And Biz has become such a cool resource for me about how to lean into creative therapies. So I would consider myself a creative therapist musically. When it comes to the side of creativity, especially with like art, this is someone that I really want to learn from. And I'm excited to interview them today for all of you guys. They are a late identified ADHD speech pathologist working in home health in the Phoenix area. So a lot warmer than where I am. She's been working with GLPs and AAC users for the past 10 years in clinics and in home settings. And she uses what we call exploratory process art with her clients as a modality to facilitate creative, accessible, and curiosity-led play and language development. So what are our outcomes for today? I hope that you listeners come away with number one, being able to define exploratory process art, being able to list 3 developmental benefits of this approach to creation with a client. Number 2, be able to name at least 2 patterns or symbols they may identify in artistic creations that can indicate language and play progress. I'm most excited about that. And third, I hope that you're going to come away being able to list at least 2 process art activities and ideas that you can use with your client or your child and describe what goals you can target for a GLP through those activities and ideas. I'm pumped about this. I feel like I'm going to come away with great ideas that I can use tomorrow. And that's, a quote I say often. What idea can the listeners use tomorrow? All right. Well, after all of that, welcome to the podcast, Biz.
Well, hi. That
Thank
was so
you.
nice. Thank you so much.
Not a bad intro. Did I
No, not at
checked
all.
all the
Not at all.
boxes? Good.
Thank you
I'm
so
so glad.
much. I'm so excited to be here.
It's great to have you. I've been looking forward to this a lot. Now, for those of you who are watching live, you are seeing that Biz has the most beautiful hair. It is pink and blue and purple, I think.
It's all the colors adjacent to pink. As you can see, like I am a pink
You're pink, yeah.
person.
Me too.
Everything around me is pink. And so,
Which,
oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
no, I was gonna say, I think that's just incentive for people who might be like streaming this without video, that they should come and watch the video version because your hair is so lovely.
Well, thank you.
Okay, so I gave a little bit of an intro, but what I want to hear, it's a common question for me, is like, what's your GLP origin story? How did you get to the point where right now you're speaking on a podcast that is exclusively about Gestalt processing?
Honestly, I don't even remember where like I first heard the term or I first was like, huh, what's a GLP? What I do remember is that I read something about it somewhere, and this was like pre-meaningful speech course, right? Like not a lot of people were talking about it. So truly, I have no idea where I even saw it. But as I signed up for the course that March had available, I started going, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. Oh, no, this is what I'm seeing. These are patterns I've been recognizing. And as I started to take a lot of those ideas and implement them into my play-based therapy, and instead of trying to like redirect to some form of language that we were trying to get to, once I started like leaning in to the gestalts and leaning into that kind of play, my client's language exploded. Like there was just this rapid progression and like really client generated progression that I hadn't seen before really leaning into this. And so, I think I would kind of identify myself with you of being a loving skeptic in some of the areas and going like, like I want to know more about this, but really leaning into that framework and into that value of the language that's being brought and really giving weight to the meaning and the ideas that are being expressed was such a game changer for me. And I find that play and that therapy so much more joyful and attuned. And so it's just been the most beautiful shift in my practice that way.
And I think it'll be cool to talk about. I love the concept of attunement, talking about how that can emerge through artistic experiences with these kids. But let's wait for that until we get into some definitions. For people who are listening, they know what art can look like. They know what art can make them feel. They've experienced art in all these different ways. But exploratory process art, can you describe that for someone who has no idea what that means?
Yeah. So process art and exploratory process art is about the process. It's about the actual making. So we're not so much focused on what it's going to look like at the end. And we can get into this later. You may have some clients who have a very clear idea of what they want to do and have a goal of what they want to make. But the exploratory part is I'm going to play with materials and just go, what if? And see what feels fun, what feels interesting, right? It's more about the decisions that are being made in the process and the where attention is going in the process. And that's something I want to tap into a lot is talking about this like container and anchor for attention that I think exploratory art can be. And so I think like a lot of times people are really excited to use art in therapy and are really experienced with using like, here's the craft we're going to make. But sometimes that can be a little bit stressful, particularly for our demand avoidant clients. And so this exploratory art is, I'm going to put out some things and maybe that those things are paint or stickers or paper or glue, pom-poms, you know, anything really. And I'm going to put it out and see what do we do with it? What feels fun? What captures attention and what really tunes into this is cool. What happens if I X? What happens if I Y? And just following that play path forward using artistic materials.
What are some of, you mentioned a couple of materials, but what are some of your favorites or materials that you've seen lead to really cool like spark moments?
Um, so this comes like personally, I love a paper craft and I love a collage. And so I love a paper collage. Um, and so pulling things from magazines, pulling uh honestly even scrap paper of like we've doodled on it before, let's rip it. let's cut it, let's glue it, let's poke it, um let's do something with it. So even just like regular paper or like I said, old magazines, I find that a lot of information can really be gleaned from what are you picking out in a collage? What do you think is interesting? What do you think is cool? But some other things that I really love um, are like cardboard. Like, can I tape some things together and make a shape? How do I build a structure? And I've seen a lot of my GLPs really be interested in like how do I create something three-dimensional? And so it really doesn't have to be all that fancy. You don't have to go out and buy all the paint and all the paintbrushes. You can just use scraps and odds and ends that you have around your house, and how do I engage with them in a different way?
Yeah, I think about using recycling a lot. So I
Mm-hmm.
do some music classes around Baltimore for like all neurotypes. And there is usually a portion that is kind of process art
Mm-hmm.
where I'm bringing a bunch of recycling, a bunch of like donated materials. Like I had a bag of stickers that I swear were from 2003 today, like
Gorgeous.
ancient
Gorgeous.
stickers. But it's really, and what I'll do is just pass out a bunch of stuff and
Mm-hmm.
encourage families. It's not one-to-one, it's not therapy. Encourage families. I'm like, I just want to see what your kid does with this.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell them, I said, I don't want you to give any directions, any instructions. You can model,
Mm-hmm.
but there is no right way for your kid to engage with it because the what they're discovering with these materials right now is the right way. And
Mm-hmm.
it's really, really cool to give, it's kind of like the parent is giving their kid permission to do it, but I'm also giving the parent permission to do process art. And
Yes,
I'll look
yes.
around as I'm singing because I sing while they do it. So the pressure's off. People start folding, they rip, they start to make things,
Mm-hmm.
little hats. It's this opportunity, it feels like for anyone, our clients or really anyone who's engaging in a process that doesn't have an end product to just kind of like let go. I see shoulders drop. I see
Yeah,
like this,
yeah.
their bodies change too.
Yeah, I think that that's one of the things that I have found so much value in is just this like sense of grounding it can really provide. Talking about folding and tearing and gluing, I see it really reflect, and when I think about my own process as an artist and those in my clients, like it's very stimmy. It's such a fun, stimmy way. Like something about ripping for me, if I've had a very stressful day, ripping paper, cutting paper, like it just, it grounds me. And so I think there's this very um, common pattern that I see of when you play with it, you're kind of led towards sensory wise what feels good. And just it kind of helps like bring you into that more creative, regulated state where you can make choices and you can be curious. And I love seeing that both with clients and families. Um, and I think parents can also be very stressed sometimes and also clinicians too of like, well, I'm not good at drawing. I'm not good at this. I'm not creative. And the good news is just creating. That's being creative. Like there's no good way or bad way to do it. You don't have to have a certain end product, right? Like you're just playing. You're just playing with this very visual experience, um, which I always think is really cool and really fun to witness.
You're mentioning the word like grounding. I think that made me think of, so the sensory experience of creation is really important. It's what draws a lot of people into art and kind of where you can detach from symbology, you can detach from language. And someone's like, but you're a speech language pathologist. Okay, well, there's also really powerful ways to get to more meaningful language
Yeah,
by
yeah.
detaching from it first. Sometimes language can be a huge barrier to being able to engage with language. Whole different conversation. Anyway, what you were talking about with sensory and grounding, it reminded me of, I read a lot of papers to prepare for the episode because this is so interesting to me. I'm going to put the link in the chat for those of you who are here. But there was a whole table that these authors put together about so occupational therapists using process art. And they created this table about different materials, some for proprioceptive, some for like tactile input. And they were talking about how there's like certain ways of engaging in process art that can lean into the sensory differences that your client or child might have. So you think about, I know a lot of GLPs who are seekers. They're seeking input, they're seeking pressure, they're seeking that release. So one thing that they mentioned in this table they created was using chalk on a hard surface. Because think about, you've got a grip, you've got to push, you've got to stabilize. And I'm thinking like big sidewalk chalk, but there's all that stabilization that has to happen proprioceptively. They also mentioned the idea of putting paint into a squirt gun.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think about like how much you've got to engage your hands for that. You may even like go into different like body planes to reach different places. I know a lot of my clients, like they don't really engage in different planes of movement. It's very much like focused downward. And so that could do some different planes. What else did they mention? I mean, clay and Play-Doh, all of the pushing and squishing that has to happen there. So you just reminded me so much of like this paper and how we can, and I may be jumping ahead, like think about goals, what we're working on.
Yeah.
This could also help with some like OT or more global goals.
Oh, for sure. And there's a lot for, especially like for our clients who do struggle with fine motor skills, really bringing it big engages some of those other types of movements, right? Like if you move your paper from the floor to the wall and, pull and push and go up and down, do, on your belly on a platform swing, put your paper under.
Oh, cool.
If you have a big area, like you said, with chalk, or if you have like a big piece of butcher paper and a scooter board, sit on the scooter board and move around and make marks. Like there are so many opportunities, regardless of gross or fine motor ability, that we can bring in these different elements of movement and really, really tap into those in a way that is engaging. And like you said, might also really benefit those OT goals. We're crossing midline a lot of the time. We're working on range of motion with that. And I'm not an OT, right? Like, I'm not writing those goals, but I think the benefits are really there as well.
Yeah, and think about how much we want other people carrying over our strategies and their time with the kid. If we can lean into those for the OT, I mean, it's always appreciated to again, like creating the containers to work on certain things. Okay, so that brings us to container. You and I, containers and contents. You and I were joking before we got started about like I'm always talking about, and people who've watched it, like I make this rectangle shape. I'm like the container,
Yes,
we're creating different containers of time and of space and of materials for these kids. That's what a therapy room is. That's what their playroom can look like. So process art acting as a container for certain types of growth. Tell me what that means to you.
Yeah, so I think that it's important to note that so many of our GLPs and our autistic learners are so visually oriented. Like there is so much visual information that they are taking in at any time and may just be holding cognitively, that it might not even be in their environment. There may be that really rich internal image. And I think sometimes, particularly if there's also an ADHD component. Sometimes it can be kind of hard to filter which of that visual information is relevant, right? And relevant is such a broad term, right? I'm not necessarily advocating for like you pay attention to what I'm doing, but like it can be really hard to sift like what are we all paying attention to right now. And so when we have something tactile, we have something tangible, and I put something on that paper, on I make a mark in the paint. Now there is something that I am so sensory tapped into, my attention is there. Um, and so even for us as therapists, I think it provides this attention container. Like it really helps us to go, oh, this is visually what you're attending to right now. Um, I have a client who, oh, light of my life. Like I adore her. She's so funny. She's so creative. We had been working on some narrative goals. And she would pull, it was so interesting. Like she wasn't necessarily scripting the shows, but she was scripting something about the shows she would watch. So like Clarabelle used all the carrots for the carrot cake. Uh, Gil was so mad. But what was happening is her attention was jumping so much from one idea to another that it was really challenging to get this coherent narrative of what was happening. And I'm doing my GLP Nancy Drew, like, okay, what's happening in this episode? And it was apparent she was pulling so many different things. Well, the second she started storyboarding it, and it was so interesting, like it didn't happen with doll houses. Like, we tried doll houses, we tried, some visuals that just they weren't landing. The second she started drawing them on paper, it was it was almost like, well, now there was a sense of permanence that put it on paper was able to provide. So there was this sense of like, okay, it's down now. I can hold this idea and transition it to the next. And so it was this very it was so exciting for me as a therapist because I was like, oh my gosh, look how we're building something cohesive from all these parts you have. Um, and now we can put them together to make something new and to make something that is able to clearly express what you're trying to tell me. Um, and so I think there's something so powerful about the act of putting it down, the act of that movement or that choice having a very visual, tactile place in your attention field. And that's kind of how I was talking earlier. Like it really, I think, serves as this anchor for us in the session of we have all of this going on. If you're at home, maybe there's dogs barking, maybe there's things going on, sister's got a show on in the background. Like we take all of that and we're able to put it and keep it here, which is so helpful when you are modeling language. Because I know personally, as a clinician, there's been so many times where I think there was a mismatch between what my client was visually attuned to and visually engaged with and the language I was modeling. So it wasn't landing the same way. And so when they're able to start putting something down, it just kind of gives me this window and this really good opportunity to say, oh, I see what you're thinking about, because I can literally see, what you're thinking about. And so it's been a really cool way to really anchor us both in a moment in a really meaningful way.
Yeah, it sounds like it's the act of externalization. And
Mm,
it's also a translation process of thoughts. And
Mm-hmm.
so, I mean, I'm not going to go into like the nature of thought itself, but thought kind of exists like beyond dimension in some way. All right, I got to reel it in anyway. But like, I'm thinking, so like, not today, but I think about thoughts they're so nebulous, but through creating art, we're translating it to like 2 dimension in front of us,
Mm-hmm.
or even a 3 dimension, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're taking thought, which exists on a plane that, most humans, we can't agree on. It's so nebulous, but then it's a translation process into 2D or 3D, which there you can hold in your hands, you can point to,
Mm-hmm.
you can have joint attention on art,
Mm-hmm.
whereas having joint attention on a thought is,
It's rough.
right?
It's
And I
rough.
like the idea. I think that's so important of what I assume a client is thinking about or attending to may not be truly what they're attending to, either because I'm misunderstanding where their gaze is. Their
Mm-hmm.
gaze may not be indicative of their true attention. Because I mean, it could be also like ocular motor too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That the motor control over the eye movements may not be indicative of thought and attention. Wow. You just, well, is there anything there that you want to comment on or push back on?
I did just want to comment on the like
Yeah.
visually, what are you attending to? I think even in terms of visual quality, like what is the quality visual you're attending to? Because I mean, we know so many GLPs and autistic learners have a rich relationship with color. Hello. Like color is so deeply meaningful and might be that might be the thing they're attending to. But some of our learners are attending to how the light moves and how things are moving. They might be attending to what does the texture look like? And so even if we're just thinking of like, okay, you're looking at this thing, what do you like about it? Is it the shape? Is it the color? Is it how the light interacts with it? And I think when we engage in that visual play, we get to see a little bit of that, like you said, externalized. We get to see this internal process made tangible in a way. And so for us, again, I think it really helps us match language wise. Or if we're presenting other materials, I'm not saying you have to do art every session by all means. But I think it can really help us to plan what models and what environments really lend to this salience of what we're offering.
You just brought back a memory of a child who I now know is a GLP from years ago. And it's an autistic young girl. She was 2. And there was a day where she was so upset and nobody knew why. I mean, she was just like, when you hear a kid cry and you're just like,
Mhm.
they are devastated about something.
Yes.
And she had no expressive language to capture it. She's also 2. And it was really, the teachers were, they'd kind of given up. They had to keep going with the day. She was just sitting there crying. And something in me was just like, I'm going to go over with a blank sheet of paper and just start drawing a line,
Mm.
squiggles. Her whole body relaxed and
Mm.
she just watched the movements. And for
Mhm.
me, that was very exploratory, where like
Yeah.
I didn't have some end product. I wasn't going to draw her crying and then draw a speech bubble. My hand just started going.
Mhm.
And that it connects to something I did prepare and for tonight, but I forgot about that little girl, about watching someone paint or draw and why that
Mhm.
can be so powerful. And some of the ideas that came up are that, and yeah, this is like, it's so perfectly matched for that kid, that slow, purposeful strokes and watching slow, visible progress across a
Mhm.
spatial environment. It provides this simple and externally guided focal point. So
Mhm.
there's a guiding nature of it when you're creating some sort of stroke on a page.
Mhm.
I think also what that movement might have helped do for her was there was a rhythmicity and a repetition of it, where it's
Mhm.
going to curve up here, curve down there. Um, the idea of like gradual change. It wasn't like, oh, you're okay. Why are you sad? Da, 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 ba, ba, ba. That like that can kind of be like
Mhm.
harsh or scary when a kid is really upset. But it's this gradual, slow, predictable engagement of the visual system. Those are some of the things I was thinking about like why watching someone create something could be like so peaceful or lead to joint
Mhm.
attention in a way that's more gentle.
Yeah, and I have a couple thoughts on that.
Yeah.
And I think one of them is, again, I want to be so clear that art therapy is its own field, right?
Yeah, that's
And
important to say.
also I have learned so much from the field of art therapy. And so kind of one of the frameworks I look at is called the expressive therapy continuum. And it talks about like what broadly speaking, in the context of art therapy, we're using imagery to create something that like we don't yet have words for, which, when we're developing language, I see some parallels there, right? And they will talk about this progression from very abstract movement based as kind of that first, just like being able to emotionally ground before you can start to uh, create symbology and symbols and something much more um, like form based. I guess like it's this really uh, foundational like okay, I'm here, I can breathe, we can be together, and then move towards some more complexity of expression. And that's something we can talk about like when we get to talking about patterns and things that I've noticed, but just that element of experiencing the movement of it. And even just, like if you're watching reels or TikTok videos, a lot of art therapists will be like, you're stressed, just start scribbling. Just start scribbling. And there is something so regulating about watching that movement, feeling it move under you. Like you said, there's this, I can follow something, I can watch it, if I'm creating it, I can feel it underneath me. Like it hears my body in space right now. Like there's just this thing where it helps us again just kind of be present. And it's really cool to see that mirrored in my own practice linguistically.
Okay, so once more, so it's the expressive therapies continuum you mentioned.
Yes, and
Great.
I have it here.
There's a book, and that is by who's the author?
Lisa D. Hines.
Great. So that's helpful if any of you are interested. And for those of you listening live, I just put a link in a chat to a paper about the expressive therapies continuum. And one more thing I'm going to say before we get into the patterns, the symbology, and then to some activity ideas. What you're saying reminds me a lot of embodied cognition, which
Mhm.
is like a framework that I'm really interested in. I want to read a quote about embodied cognition, and I want to see if you feel like there's connections here. So, embodied cognition, it emphasizes the importance of sensory motor experience gained through our bodily interactions with the environment for acquiring and representing conceptual knowledge. There's an importance of the body for cognitive processing. It posits that cognition strictly involves the processing of abstract and amodal symbols.
Mm.
And this theory assumes that our actions and bodily experiences are crucial to cognitive processing. And
Mm.
so I think about the abstract and amodal symbols. That's so much of what it seems like you're talking about with art.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, just linking our bodily experience to our cognitive experience. I mean, it feels so deeply important. And I think regardless of who your learner is, whether they're a GLP, whether
Yeah.
they're artistic or, I have a lot of experience as well working with like motorically complex
Mm-hmm.
learners and
Yeah.
engaging movement during language has always been this huge boost of
So sorry.
of being able to acquire new information and synthesize new information and be able to make meaning,
Yeah.
of those things. So
Um, sorry, I'm thrown by that interruption. I so
you're so
apologize
good.
for that. We're gonna get right back on track, guys. Thank you. All right, perfect pivot point. Um, let's talk about the symbols and the patterns.
Mm.
So you have someone in front of you, you have a child, you have a client engaging in process art. You as a therapist, what are you noticing?
Um, I am looking at what are you doing over and over? What is our consistent here? And so I kind of touched a bit on it earlier. Um, are you continually using the same color combinations? Are you making a lot of shapes? Are you organizing? What are you doing consistently with what is presented in front of you? Um, and in doing that, I'm able to start to see like, oh, these are Buzz Lightyear's colors. Oh, this,
Whoa.
you
Okay.
you're
Okay.
you're
Okay.
like
I'm in.
like, oh, you love fuzzy things. Like you want to use a pipe cleaner, you want to use a pom pom. Um, how are you combining things? Even if we just think about like typical play development, we start to see like when I'm combining two toys, I start to see that complexity develop in language as I start to be able to use two words together. And, obviously we're looking at some differences in how this is expressed, but like if I'm consistently drawing Buzz Lightyear over and over again, but now can I draw Buzz Lightyear with um I have the carrot cake story in mind. So it's like, can I draw Buzz Lightyear with a carrot? Can I and as I start to see those things come together, well, now there tends to be a little more complex use of language because now there's something relational in that drawing. But even going before, like we have a noticeable image, right? Like I might start to play with, okay, you like that purple and that green and that white and that red together. What else can I make with those? One of the things I really love to do if I have a client making the same thing over and over and over, which I love. Actually, like there is no reason, right, in the process art to shift that or to change that. But what I like to do simultaneously um, is I'll often do my own parallel art, and sometimes I'll imitate what they're making. Sometimes I just make my own thing, right? Like if I'm not allowed to interact with what you're making, which is so real. Like we're working on boundaries, we're working on advocacy. That's great. But what I'll start to do is I'll say, okay, you're always making something with this material. You're always making something with this colors. What happens if I change the colors? What happens if I change the material? Um, what happens if I change the size? What happens if I change, um, all these little elements of it, of where you are doing the same? What happens if? And generally speaking, my clients will look over at me, and if I'm doing Buzz Lightyear in the wrong colors, they are going to tell me, you know. Um, well, and look at this. Now we have a negation in context. That's not Buzz Lightyear. That's not right. And so we take those like I love taking those things that are stable and um, can I modulate them? Can I manipulate them? Um, and what does that remind us of? For me, a mitigation, right? Like how do I take this whole that you have um the meaning that is attached to this image, and how do we play with it to make something a little bit new? How do we play with it that I take this unit of meaning that you're holding and makes sense to you and add a little bit different meaning to it, And sometimes that might be like another example I have is I have a young woman I've worked with. I've known her family forever because I've seen the brother honestly like pretty much since I started. It's wild. But I recently started with her about a year ago, and I I have to be honest, like I'm not sure what about it feels so meaningful to her, but she loves like I have these little circle papers that I initially had brought for like a spirograph. Um, I love a spirograph. Honestly, if you have a kid who loves watching movement and color, cannot recommend a spirograph highly enough. But she loved those circle papers. And I have a photo printer that she will go and she'll find stills from her favorite YouTube videos and print them out and she'll put them on the circles. And she likes to line them up and it's not all the same video. Like she pulls these stills from different videos she loves. Um, and what I've started doing is, can I like, can I stitch on top of this? Like I love embroidered photos.
Oh,
Embroidery is
cool.
another thing I love doing. And so like, can I layer?
Hmm.
Can I add some detail to this? And she'll start to like there's an attention grabbing of like,
Yes.
what are you doing? And so there's this curiosity and this like, again, just kind of developing some really authentic joint attention
Yeah.
of, and I'm not, I want to be clear, I'm not manipulating hers. I
Hmm.
think it's very, unless invited to do so, right? If a client wants me to help, I
Hmm.
wait to be invited.
Yeah.
I don't offer my ideas until they are welcomed. But so I might make my own parallel project where I am layering. I'm doing something that she does at baseline, and I'm again just that like little tweak.
Love
What
it.
can we
Yeah.
change? And I've noticed when we have novel use of materials, there is generally speaking, not always, but this novel use of language, this
Yep.
novel context, this as the complexity of the art increases, I find that the complexity of the language to describe it increases as well.
Yeah.
Um, and so just really, like I said, like taking what is constant. Is it the material? Is it the color? Is it the shape? And how do we play? And I
I
feel
like
like I've
that.
been talking a lot, so feel free to jump in.
But I've been pulling things out and creating a little like list to respond to. It's really cool because a lot of the things you're saying, they remind me of what um things that I've been trying out. It reminds me so much of the book I'm writing right now, which is about what I call play stretches.
Hmm.
One of the chapters is called modulation stretches. It's about these modulations where you're shifting something that already exists in subtle ways. And so I loved the example of Buzz Lightyear colors because there's been so many moments with kids where I'm like, wait a minute, you're lining up everything or you're creating something with the baby shark color order. Or,
Hmm.
oh, that's the Paw Patrol color order there.
Hmm.
So it's like
Hmm.
you're stepping back from the literal. And we do this with spoken gestalts, right? Where we're like,
Yeah.
hold on, pull back. But it sounds like you can also do that with artistic expression of what might be going on, what idea might be underneath what they're expressing through art right now. And yeah, that idea of the modulations of when you say that parallel project, what a cool phrase. I think about mirroring and entrainment, which we
Hmm.
talk about
Hmm.
musically related, and creating this parallel project is like mirroring and entraining.
Hmm. Hmm.
And then when you're in that attuned state, then what small change, what small modulation? Okay, yeah, I'm seeing a lot of parallels here.
Um, oh, I feel like I had an idea in my head that didn't stick very well. Um, but yeah, just this I think also this idea that I want to pull in is like as sometimes like when kids are watching me do something,
Mhm.
it's almost it's like this light bulb goes off of like, well, I didn't know I could do it that way. What
Yes.
other ways can I try it? And so there's this again, like I love tapping into that what if energy. What happens when? Um, because that's what we want kids trying and creating with their language and trying new, trying new things. We want them to come in and go, "Oh, what if I try it that way? What if I change this?" And being able to observe, and I think a lot of autistic learners, and not unique to them. There are certainly lots of neurotypes that learn this way, but there's this really rich observation process.
Okay.
This really rich, like where they're watching me, and it's kind of like how I break things up or how I
Okay.
do it. Like, how are you making that shape? Like there's this really rich experience of watching how I take this whole unit of meeting and how I might break it up into parts,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And so like there can sometimes be this light bulb of like, oh, there's other ways I can try this. I can
Mhm.
do something and create meaning similarly that has a little bit different tone or flavor or like I think a lot about when I talk texture, really I find it relating a lot to how you talk about timbre,
Oh,
music, of like, oh, like if I say, well, look who we have here. But then I say, look who we have here. That means something different, right? Like there's a different energy, there's a different emotion. And I think when kids start to play with texturally how they're making something or like form how they're making something, there tends to be this like modulation of meaning or like there's just something a little bit different about it. And so it just opens up this like, ooh, again, just what happens if, you know?
timbre and texture. Wow. Okay, that's one of my takeaways. I'm going to be thinking about that. Yeah, I think there may be listeners who they've been thinking about play stretches and how to take what is and slightly shift, but maybe not. I'd never really considered it with art before. And so there might be people listening who are like, "Oh, I know how to do that with figurines, or I know how to do that with
Mhm.
cars, but what would it look like to do those little moments of growth to see, will this kid integrate a small bit of novelty into the predictable container?"
Mhm.
um okay, let's talk. You've been throwing in cool examples of activities and ideas, but I want, if you can share some more examples you've used with kids and maybe how
Mhm.
it's helped them to make gains and tie into goals or just whatever comes up for you.
Yeah. So like I said, I love, 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 love a collage. Not just images, right? Like, and I think it's when we're talking special interests, collages, if you find, like a Disney sticker pack, like those are super, super helpful because, you can start to pull interesting things, but also collages of different materials, tissue paper, beads, popsicle sticks, cardboard, right? Like we're pulling and really you can start to see this like novel use of language and attention to like try different things. And you can also see like, is there something that is just not clicking in there, Um, Other things I really love to, I love printmaking and tracing. And I think tracing is one that a lot of highly visual, like if you have a lot of like these kids who are doing this, I think tracing is a great activity and printmaking.
Mhm.
And if you have stamps, great. If
Mhm.
you have but you can also go outside and find rocks to put in paint and put on the paper. You can find leaves. If you have toys that are okay to get messy, and obviously, like exercise caution about things that are precious and special. I'm not advocating you take the favorite figurine and dump it in paint. But like, what happens when the dinosaur stomps, right? Like, because then we start to see this like relational language start to emerge. Um, and so that's when I love, again, like tracing of where do we see similar shapes in the world. Very similar to like how do we see similar structures in language? I really just think it's like this visualization of those linguistic processes. Um, I'm trying to think. This is if you're feeling bold and daring, I love a sewing machine in therapy. Like there's
That
something,
is extremely bold,
it's
extremely daring, and
extremely
so
bold and
niche.
daring.
That's so
Um, but like one of my guys, it has helped him develop so much cognitive flexibility over the years because he is a collector. And he has many, many interests that may switch on a dime, right? Like he is deeply passionate about ocean animals and Super Mario Brothers and Pokemon and, Catman and Dogman. And he is a figurine guy. Well, mom started to be like, it is not financially sustainable to every time you want a figurine for us to do that. But it was so hard because to him, the collection is the thing, right? Like if something is missing, it's not the collection.
yeah.
It's
You need
not
the whole.
complete.
It's not
It's
the
not the whole.
gestalt.
It's not the gestalt. Come on, mom. And so what he started doing is he would draw like little paper dolls of them. And that was able to help him complete this idea so that we weren't so distressed and losing the engagement and the ability to express through, and we have since I brought one of my just kids sewing machines, and he was like, I want to make a Monty Mole to go with my stuffy collection, and he's from Super Mario Brothers, just this little guy. And I want to be so clear, I've never made a Monty Mole. I have no idea. Like I I have some sewing experience, but not in drafting patterns necessarily. Um, and so it's a really cool experience, not only to model that cognitive flexibility of like, I can create these different units in different ways, but also him watching me go, ooh, I don't know how to do this. And so like one of the things we're working on for him when we're talking goals is like asking clarifying questions when he doesn't understand. And so I get to model, ooh, hold on. I don't know how to do that. And so I get to model asking these questions. I get to model like I think as you get to like more advanced stages, you also have this opportunity to address a lot of like executive functioning goals of, oh, I have this idea. I kind of don't know how to do it. And this idea of like, let me try and correct. Let me try and correct. And it is really interesting to watch how like when kids see me try something novelly, um, they're really honestly very forgiving, in a way that sometimes I'm surprised by of like, I don't think this is gonna look right, but they're so excited and there's like the buy-in is there. They're like, oh my gosh, we're making Monty Mole. This is the best day of my life. Um, and through that, like you get to see the development and like really rich opportunities to, like I said, practice those executive functioning skills of like, how do I stay with my goal when things go wrong? How do how do I monitor when I don't understand? Um, and to be able to see that in progress and then to have something very, again, very physical, very tangible, very tactile that I can hold. Um, I think also I've touched on it a bit, but there's so much rich opportunity for um, pragmatics goals when we're doing art, particularly around like protesting and saying no of like this is mine, this is yours, asking for assistance. How do we do that? How do we get people to help us meet our goal? And like one of the things that for me clinically feels very important is to help equip my clients very early on, shifting like where their language is at is how do I get what I need to make this feel more accessible? Like what needs to change? How do I modify this? How do I, what do I need differently from you as my communication partner? And I think like when we're doing art, that's a very rich experience of because I have this thing and this process and this project in front of me that like is meaningful to me. There's this experience of like being able to advocate for yourself and being able to say like I want this material but it's not here. Oh, well, you know, I don't have that today. What are we going to do about that? Like we can do this problem solving together. And oh, you're right. I could bring it next week. Okay. So like we don't have to finish this today. You know, and making plans together and making these decisions jointly. I think in a way that like really improves this social emotional like relationship.
I think about, I love that there's like higher level, like almost there's like the sequencing involved. I love the idea of like even like intentionally getting things wrong while you're
Mm.
creating something. I
Hmm.
love to do that with a high attunement to when it might be going too far.
Right.
But yeah, like making Luigi and Mario the opposite colors.
Mm-hmm.
Something like that, where it's like, why would I know that? Like, I'm just some old lady. Like, why, why,
Hmm.
sorry. But things like that can really help elicit language. But I want to, if we can kind of roll it back to maybe like early stage
Mm-hmm.
GLP, stage one, stage two, what are some materials or ideas to even get that buy-in? I've got a couple I wrote down, but I want to, is it okay? Can I share those and see what
No,
you think?
please go ahead.
Okay. So I was thinking you had mentioned stickers. So stickers of favorite characters, because I'm always saying like, let's start with special interests.
Hmm.
What is going to catch their eye right away? So it's definitely stickers of favorite characters. Um, Another one I thought of, because I am a former scrapbooker,
Mm.
2003 hated to see me coming. Like I love scrapbooking. But like cutouts of letters. So for kids who are hyperlexic, who have that interest in letters and numbers, the little cutouts of those, what can we do with those and create with those? I was thinking like scrapbook paper that might have special interest things on it. Scrapbook paper with astronauts or planets, or I
Mm.
don't know. Do you know any kids who like animals, or is that
One or
just
two, one
one
or
or
two,
two, just a couple?
just a handful.
Um, and like ripping that or like tearing out
Hmm.
around the lion. I was thinking about like putting out materials where you have every color of the rainbow available for our rainbow making kids.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was thinking about my kids who love shiny things, and I was like, oh, sequins.
Yes.
I would not do glitter. Maybe. I don't know. Have you ever done glitter?
So I personally I love glitter and I think I'm a real unicorn of a therapist in that way. I think most therapists despise glitter. But I think you have to be obviously very cognizant of who your client is. If they are a thrower, perhaps glitter is not the choice. But if you have a client who loves light and movement, glitter can be a very impactful, like how do I hold it and notice that movement. Um, but I do think that sequins are a much more easily cleaned up way to also get some of that. Another idea I was thinking of when you were talking is especially utilizing recycled materials. Can we cut letters off of our cereal boxes? Can we cut letters,
Ooh.
you know, especially for our letter play kids, or colors, you know, can I just rip up and then I can line up the colors? And one of my favorite things doing is like color blocking. And again,
Okay.
very much for my color passionate GLPs. um, is like I love to like color block a familiar character or a familiar topic. So
Oh,
say
wow. Okay.
we're cutting out just scraps from our cereal boxes and I have the Buzz Lightning or the Buzz Lightyear colors.
Yeah.
It might not look anything like his shapes, but I might put the colors together and go, oh, it's Buzz Lightyear.
Yes.
And then like we pull the different colors and again we're taking these pieces and we're manipulating
Mm-hmm.
um, and I will say oftentimes I get a very big laugh when I
Yeah.
do that, when they're like, "Oh, yeah, it is, you know?
Hmm.
Um, so just taking those things, or even if you have a shape kid, like if you have a kid who loves circles and squares and triangles,
Of
one or
course
two,
I do.
again, one
Yeah.
or two. So we take those out, and can I take those shapes to make something recognizable? So if you have an animal kid, can I take like a circle and a couple other circles and a rectangle and it's an elephant? Oh, how do I make a dog out of these shapes? And again, I think that works really well when you're working on mitigations
Yeah.
of, here are these familiar parts. Let's combine them in novel ways to get
Yes.
something familiar and safe to you that already holds.
Hmm. Yeah.
So yeah, shape blocking, color blocking with those really simple, wrapping up tissue paper, wrapping
Ooh.
paper. If you've got those scraps like after the holidays that you're like, what am I gonna do with this? Like I can't
Hmm.
wrap. Rip it up, make shapes out of it, cut letters out of it. Um, like I really, really want to emphasize how much you do not need to invest in like a whole art kit, and if you have a kid who really takes to it and loves it, by all means, get some more things. But like, I personally really love this idea of using what you have available, again, to do just some of those, like, okay, I've got red, yellow, blue, and brown, it's Woody, like,
Hmm.
it's just really engaging for kids, and they
Yeah.
really have a lot of fun with it.
The word evoke comes to mind. That's what I've been writing
Mhm.
about in the modulation chapter, is because I hear people, because I'm always telling people, draw it out, draw the,
Yeah.
create that comic book, create that storyboard. And people are like, oh, I don't draw, I don't know how to. And I say, okay, but can you make something that evokes it?
Hmm.
And that also, I think, takes off a lot of the pressure too, of like, well, I'm not an artist, I'm not this, I'm not that. Okay, but can you attempt to create something that evokes an idea or a symbol?
Hmm.
And it's also going to make you better at interpreting what that
Hmm.
kid is trying to evoke with their work too.
Hmm.
Like, it just takes the pressure off everyone too.
I
It's
think that,
like,
like, and if I'm actually terrible at drawing, like I'm horrible at drawing. I have had so many parents and kids, they just laugh, and it just brings a lot of levity to it.
yeah,
Like, there's no pressure. This is my whole gig, like this is the thing
yeah.
I love to do. And I would actually say I'm really terrible at it, at that
Mm-hmm.
particular expression. And so again, I'll be taking that, and I'll be using that of like, how can we help evoke this imagery? How can we
Yeah,
help engage that? Because, when we think about a gestalt, like, it's so encompassing of the whole experience. Like,
yeah.
there is such a visual element to it, for a lot of our kids, like that visual is really, really strong for them. And so I love that vocabulary choice, and I will be stealing it and putting it in my pocket
It's
moving forward.
yours. It's
Thank
always
you.
been yours.
Thank
No, it's
you.
this whole thing. It's like you're engaging in this translational process. It's like a co-created translational process. And then there it is in front of you. It's really cool. I feel like I've gotten a lot of ideas that I would like to try, maybe leaning into making some more messes. If you were to like say to someone like the biggest takeaway from this about exploratory process art for speech therapists, what would it be? What's your take home message?
Um, I think get kids creating as soon as you can, because what they provide visually can give us so much information about where they are finding meaning, and it can give us so many rich opportunities to expand and mitigate and play, and also to just like really have a lot of fun. Art is fun, and so I think it is such a stellar tool in your therapy toolbox that everybody can do. If you are creating, you're creative. Everybody has the opportunity to be creative. And I want to land on, I think language is creative. Like, the reason I love language is I find it very inherently creative. We take this idea and we put it into the world. And I think art is just another way to explore that.
That was the best answer ever. All right, that's the end. Busy. Oh my gosh, I'm so glad I got to do this. For those of you who joined us live and you want credit for being here, which you should get your hours done now so that you're not panicking in December. Make sure you complete the course on Speech Therapy PD's website after this. And there is information in the chat about how to do that. There's going to be a quiz, there's going to be a little survey for you to fill out, and then you're going to be 1 hour closer to checking all those boxes. Thank you so much for joining. This was a very cool episode. I'd love to hear feedback from any listeners about if you try any of this, how your clients or your kid respond to it. Feel free to message me on Instagram and tell me how it went. Thank you so much, everyone. Let's give a big round of applause to Biz for coming. And I'll see you in 2 weeks for our next